Okay, why don't we get started, and then if anyone's late, they can just join us in a bit. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to have everyone here to chat about optimizing your e-learning review process. We'll just start here. I'll introduce myself. My name's Ariel. I'm the customer success manager here at zipBoard, and I work with a lot of e-learning teams and help them optimize their review process. And I hear about a lot of the challenges they face. And so today we're going to kind of cover a few of those challenges that we see quite often, some of the causes of these challenges, the impacts these have on your morale and the schedule and the budget and all of that. And then hopefully some solutions and tips that might help cover these challenges. And then of course we'll end with a Q&A. All right, so I would love this webinar to be as interactive as possible. You'll see in your Zoom screen there, you have an option to raise your hand. So if you have any comments or questions throughout the webinar, feel free to raise your hand and we'd love to hear from you. You can also use the chat function if you would prefer. And so I'd just love to start with hearing from you about what challenges you face in your review process. So go ahead, add it in the chat or raise your hand. Okay, if no one has anything to add, we'll just continue on here with some of the challenges that we've found. And if you think of anything, let me know. So the few of the challenges that we've discovered are, one, getting your reviewers to actually look at your course and provide feedback on time. I think this is a pretty common one. And then again, receiving non-constructive feedback until it's too late. So receiving this sounds good, and then when you're right about to publish, hearing, oh, you know what, we should change this, this, and this. And obviously that can be pretty frustrating. I'm just seeing Tony mention SME responsiveness and many levels of review. So yeah, that kind of falls into the getting people to actually look at your content, right, Tony? And then our last challenge that we discovered was managing lots of feedback, specifically conflicting feedback. And that, yeah, definitely takes a lot of time. Okay, so we'll jump in. So the first challenge we talked about was getting reviewers to actually look at your content and provide feedback on time. And the cause of this is really simple. People are busy and everyone's busy, we get it, but obviously it can be frustrating still. And then I think another big cause of this is that the perceived time is greater than the actual time it would take. People think that this is going to be a super long, tedious process. In reality, it doesn't have to be that way. And then the impact of this is obviously it delays your schedule if you're not getting reviews on time. And it's frustrating. You put all this time and effort into your course, and it would be nice that someone could just take the time to look at it and so you can continue on with your process. All right, so a few tips and solutions here. We have talked about getting your course in front of your manager. Obviously that's important, but if your manager doesn't have the time right now, try getting in front of frontline workers. So for example, if you're making a course for the HR recruiting team, show current, like for new hires, if you show the current HR recruiting team, get their feedback, they'll have a great idea of what needs to be included and how that course should be structured. And yeah, so definitely take advantage of their feedback if you can. Another tip here would be to build this time into your schedule. So talk to your project manager if you make your own schedules. Do this yourself. Really take the time to think about who you need to review this course, how many reviewers are necessary, and make sure you build a realistic timeline. That it does take people a little bit of time to get those reviews to you. And lastly, make it easy for your reviewers. If your reviewers think that they'll have to go in, they'll have to enter into the content and have a separate spreadsheet open and then have a list of different comments they're adding and be going back and forth, and it's going to be this long, tedious process, they're not going to want to do it, and it's going to take them a lot longer to get around to it. So make sure it's as easy for them as possible. Was there any other solutions or tips people had on this challenge? Any tips that people want to provide? Again, just add it in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. Yes, avoid holidays. That's a great one. Obviously, it's hard when you're scheduling, but definitely take a look at that because no one wants to be sitting in front of their computer on a holiday for sure. Any other tips you want to provide to the team here? Okay, great. We'll move on to our next challenge. Thank you for participating, Samira. Okay, our challenge number 2 was receiving non-constructive feedback and then receiving the critiques after the review period. So the cause here is really reviewers don't want to take the time to actually do an in-depth evaluation until they know it's about to be published. And then again, this kind of comes from the perceived time to review being greater than the actual time. And the impact here is similar to the other one, right? It's a delay in your schedule, time's wasted by dealing with all of this non-constructive feedback. And then again, it's frustrating. So here, what we really want to do is make sure that the scope and the objectives of your course, of your project, are super clearly stated. Even if one of your reviewers was the person that gave you these objectives, even reiterating these objectives to them could be a good idea. They might have forgotten. And so it's really important that everyone reviewing your course knows who this course is for, why this course was created, what content it's meant to cover. And this will allow them to be able to provide strong feedback that actually is helpful instead of just sounds good. And obviously sounds good is inevitable. People just can't help themselves, right? And it's nice to hear every once in a while, but 15 sounds good isn't always helpful. So make sure that you have a system in place to separate comments from actionable feedback. So have a system in place to filter through all of your comments and make sure you're separating the sounds goods from the we need to change this, and you can focus your energy on those pieces of actionable feedback. Was there any other tips here for how to avoid receiving non-constructive feedback, or how to make sure that feedback comes before the end of the review period? Make it easy again to share feedback. Yeah, that's definitely kind of a trend here, is just as easy as you make it, the more likely people will do it, right? People don't want to spend hours on some tedious process just to kind of get a couple pieces of feedback in. So yeah, making it easy as possible is definitely a good one. I'll just give one more minute in case anyone's mid message there. Okay, let's move on to challenge number 3. All right, so this one comes after you finally received your feedback. And this one really deals with managing all of that feedback, especially conflicting feedback. And so there's kind of 2 causes here. The first cause is an ineffective task management system. Obviously, this will make it way more time consuming and way more overwhelming to deal with. And the second cause here is reviewers not having access to other reviewers' comments and not being able to participate and engage with other reviewers. And the impact here is a delay in schedule. Obviously, dealing with a huge ineffective task management system takes time and it wastes time. And then also dealing with conflicting reviews is time consuming and frustrating. All right, so some of the solutions here are keep it simple with regards to your task management system. If it's definitely best to have a system that's all in one place, you want your content, your reviewers, your feedback all in one easy to use platform, so you're not jumping between your course and a spreadsheet and all of the comments and feedback that have been emailed to you in a million different emails. Cut out all of the different platforms, put it all in one place to make sure that you're able to be as efficient as possible going through all those tasks. It's also helpful if you're able to take those tasks and assign due dates, assign people to them, and make sure that that's all easy to do in one place. And then the next piece of feedback to deal with those conflicting issues is to bring reviewers into the conversation. So make sure reviewers have access to other reviews, that they're able to have conversations and hopefully deal with some of these conflicting pieces of feedback at the same time. And that might just mean kind of clearing up misunderstandings. And yeah, that kind of saves you some time dealing with it, and just make sure it's all super clear and in context. Is there any other suggestions with this one? Any other tips that we want to share with the group? Even if you want to share how you manage your feedback, that would be super helpful. I'm sure people would love to hear, because everyone seems to have a bit of a different system. Okay, so Tony's saying we have our reviewers split up, SME feedback is incorporated, then the material goes through the copy editing, then approver review. So yeah, there's a few phases there for sure. Tony, how do you manage the phases? Is it all in the same place, or? Oh yes, Samira, sorry about that. Here, I'm gonna unmute you here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, yes, thank you.
Yes, I was wondering whether it would be a good idea to set a meeting with the reviewers. So give them the time to review and give you their feedback on the documents by written or by email, but then set a meeting to meet all together and discuss. Would that be a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it really depends on your team. I know with some larger teams that can be challenging because people are in different time zones, and it's really just easier for everyone to work asynchronously. So we'll chat about it in the next couple of slides, but we do have some tips that help people work asynchronously and kind of avoids having to do those big meetings. But if there's really conflicting feedback, or if there's kind of an issue that needs to be addressed, then yes, a meeting can sometimes be a good idea. Was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect, no problem. Okay, and I see Tony has their hand up as well, so let's hear from Tony.
Hi, thanks. So just to clear up what I was saying there. So we have a lot of people who we interact with who they're not familiar with like the process of designing learning. They just are experts in what they're experts in. So usually we have like a level setting meeting first when it kicks off to like explain what's going to happen throughout the whole development process, so they kind of know what to expect. And then we'll do like our SME feedback is incorporated with the developer and the SME first, just because we found that if sometimes we can have upwards of, with the developer, multiple SMEs and then multiple approvers, you might have like, 8 different people looking at a thing over a period of time. And if you have them all doing it at the same time, there's a lot of conflicts that occur. So we kind of just get the SMEs to get all of their feedback in first so that the content is sound. Then it goes through copy. And then by the time it gets to people who are essentially approvers, it's close to the final product, so that there's not a lot of feedback that we're getting from people at that level who are usually really busy and are some of those people who are hard to pin down, that they take a lot of time because they're looking at things with like grammatical errors or whatnot. But one of the things we are looking at is how to streamline the process, because stripping it out that way makes each level of review faster, but it's still a long time to get through all of those levels, because every time you send it to a new person, there's a turnaround period for that individual.
Right. Yeah, no, that's for sure. And I think what you mentioned with the meeting kind of to start off, I think that's a great idea that kind of goes back to what we talked about with really making sure the objectives and the scope is super clear. So I think that's definitely really helpful advice. So thank you for sharing that. And then again, with the streamlining, I'll kind of cover that, because what I guess we'll go into after this slide is kind of some of the different ways zipBoard can help solve these some of these challenges. And with zipBoard, your SMEs or whichever individuals that are part of the phase you're currently in can all be reviewing at the same time. So it means you're not sending someone the document, they're adding their reviews, you're taking it, you're changing, and then you're kind of going person by person. You can send it to all of your SMEs at one point, and then they can do their reviews and then do your phases that way. So yeah, we'll get into that a little bit later. And then obviously, if you have any more questions or if you want to book a demo, we can schedule that as well. So thank you for sharing. That was, yeah, super helpful. And I'm just seeing Suki here has some points in the chat. So they're saying we have 3 stages of review with SMEs, and each is preceded with an internal review. Okay, that sounds helpful. And then we have review meetings post-submission of review comments to confirm changes. We have a standard review form, which is pre-populated with assets, screen titles to support simple review. That sounds helpful, making it easy for reviewers. We love that. And then we now also use file stage, which allows all media forms, including HTML, to be reviewed collaboratively in one tool. We have lead SME/admin on the SME side to collaborate. So yeah, that collaboration is obviously really important as well. So yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. I'm just, oh, here, Suki has their hand up. Oh, yes, here, sorry. We'll let Suki talk here, and then we'll keep going.
Yeah, hi. I was just going to mention, because I mentioned file stage there, and you asked earlier if anyone had any hints and tips or tools that people could use.
Yeah, please.
So I know it's outside of your area, but it's a really useful tool, and it's one that I think is worth a mention. So most of the external review tools and project management tools have up to date only included, standard media, so video, image, etc. Text-based documents, obviously, but this is one of the very few that now includes e-learning and HTML within their collaborative review. So basically you can hold all projects, which is really helpful. I'm hoping a lot of the development tools will pick up on this as well.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, I think I've never used it, so it's always cool to hear about new tools. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so I think that is it for comments. If no one has anything to add, we'll just keep going here, and if anything comes up, again, feel free to raise your hand. Okay, so like I mentioned, zipBoard can help with a lot of these issues that we talked about. So the first one here is make it easy for reviewers. We've kind of talked about this a couple times. And with zipBoard, there's no spreadsheets, there's not a million emails. You simply add a link and send it to your reviewers. They are able to jump right into the content and start reviewing. As you can see in this video here, we have lots of great review tools that allow them to add comments directly in the content, which also makes it easier for you, right? Because you know exactly what they're referring to, and there's other tools there that they can kind of add more context with. So that makes it easy for everyone, which is always good. And then the next thing we talked about was having the ability to separate your comments like sounds good or looks great with actionable feedback that you actually need to do something about. So here we have an option with zipBoard that all of your reviewers' comments go into a category of comments, and you have the option to go through and add whichever comments you'd like to be a task as a task. And this just really helps kind of filter through the noise. And sorry. And then again, we talked about just simplifying your task management. So once you've received those comments and that feedback, making sure you have a really streamlined way of dealing with it all. And so with zipBoard, we can, all of your tasks that were left on your content, like I said, they go into your comments and then can be added as tasks. Each task can be assigned to a person. It can be assigned a due date. People can write messages within the comment, within the task, and add their comments to kind of sort out any conflicts. And then it can be prioritized and then filtered from there, which kind of helps keep everything organized and again, kind of filter through all that clutter. And then the last thing we talked about was making sure your reviewers have access to each other's comments and can kind of sort things out between them and go from there. So with zipBoard, your reviewers can see others' comments and add replies. And obviously you have access to all of that as the owner and the manager. So that's always helpful to see. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I see we have a few minutes left here. So if anyone has any comments or questions they'd like to add, now would be the time.